Hey, it's Mo Eggert. Chances are you're thinking ahead to football season and probably wondering where you're going to watch all the big games. I've got a suggestion. Long Neck Sports Grill. By the way, phenomenal plays for your fantasy football draft. They've got an amazing menu, but you got to get the wings, an incredible beer selection, and, of course, 4K TVs all over the place, and they've got the sound on for all the big games. Plus, they've got an outdoor patio for those perfect summer and warm autumn evenings. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often. Let's talk injuries, and unfortunately, there was a pretty big one on Sunday that impacted the game. Clark Harris, the biceps injury. Let's bring in from OrthoCincy's. OrthoCincy's is the orthopedic authority, 40 physicians in 12 convenient locations, including a number with very convenient hours in Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana. With us from OrthoCincy's is Dr. Adam Metzler. Let's start with this. Let's talk about the biceps injury. Clark Harris, what's the difference between a biceps injury that could end a player's season and one that he could maybe come back from?
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. The bottom line is if it's more of a muscle-based injury, like in the muscle, it's probably going to be more of a muscle strain, and he might just miss a couple weeks. But the reality is that it's probably more of a tendon disruption. And most likely it occurred at his elbow. And if it's a full thickness biceps tear where the biceps attaches down at the elbow joint, then that is a surgical corrective problem. And he would be back to snapping between 4 and 6 months. So he would miss likely the season for a full complete, what we call a distal biceps tear, which means towards the elbow area. But if it's in the muscle belly and the muscle strain of the muscle proper, not at the tendon insertion, he may only miss a short period of time. But just like if you had a hamstring strain or a quad strain, if it's not torn at the attachment and the tendon attachment point, you're likely going to be back for the season, but depends on the grade of that strain. But sounds like he tore it off from the bone at the tendon spot, so that's going to miss some time.
Where do you feel that pain? Is it in your elbow? Is it right in the meat of the bicep? Is it your shoulder? Where are you feeling that?
Yeah, in general, if it's going to be that elbow tear, that biceps attaches to 2 points. One's up at the shoulder, one's down at the elbow. So if you tear that down at the elbow, you're going to feel it right in the front of that elbow, kind of deep in what they call the antecubital fossa. It just means the front of that elbow area.
What are the sort of treatments that you employ for something like this?
Well, if it's a complete tear at the attachment point at the elbow for a biceps tendon, it's a surgical intervention 95% of the time. For anybody who's active, they're going to want their biceps tendon reconstructed. It's really repaired directly, I should say. So they're going to want their biceps tendon repaired. And the rehab and the surgery is pretty straightforward, pretty streamlined process. And what we do is we essentially reattach it back to its location on the radius bone. And about 6 months, most patients are back doing whatever they want to do, even 4 months for most of our athletes and our workers. So.
All right, that's an injury that we're dealing with talking about Sunday's game. I want to go back before the season started. The Bengals drafted a kid by the name of Cam Taylor-Britt. He is on IR with what they're calling an abdominal injury. Now, that strikes me as vague and very sort of all-encompassing. Give me an idea of what some of the more common abdominal injuries are and what some of the treatments are.
Yeah, some of the most basic ones would be just a basic abdominal strain, a muscle pull. And that is essentially where you stretch the muscle. The main muscles in the front of the stomach area, the core muscles, if you will, are the rectus muscles and your oblique muscles. And you can have muscle strains or essentially pulls of any of those muscles. And if they're low grade, they can take a couple weeks of just physical therapy, resting, anti-inflammatories, and therapeutic physical therapy modalities to feel better. But a lot of athletes are having these, what they call core muscle injuries. The term we used to use was sports hernia. You may have heard that term before. They've sort of switched away from sports hernia, and they like to just use the term core muscle injury because it involves the central muscles along the abdominal musculature. And so if he sustained a core muscle injury and had surgery for that, which is essentially where they reattach, where the rectus abdominis muscles and the oblique muscles attached down to the pelvis, then they have to have the athlete then has to recover due to that direct repair. They have to respect the repair and the biology of healing, if you will.
It's funny. I've been following sports my entire life. It's maybe not until the last, 5 or 6 years that you heard that term, core injury, and now you hear it all the time. And so I'm going to start going back and referring to it as an abdominal injury. Easier for me. I want to talk about the Bengals play the Cowboys on Sunday. By the way, Dr. Adam Metzler is with us, OrthoCincy's, to kind of run through some of the larger injury questions we have. They're playing the Cowboys. Dak Prescott is their quarterback. He's not going to play. He suffered a broken thumb. So here I am. I'm thinking back to when I was in high school. I suffered a thumb fracture playing baseball. No surgery. They just put it in a cast and said, you know what, for 2 months, you're going to have a hard time typing. What makes one thumb fracture require surgery and another not require surgery?
Well, the really simplest way to answer that is it a stable fracture or not? And I jokingly say, well, that's why we spend 6 years of training in orthopedics to determine what's stable and unstable. And so that's the basic way of saying it. If there's a lot of angulation to the fracture, if it's out of line significantly, that's obviously an unstable injury. And it usually means, is it a complete fracture, an incomplete fracture? Is it heavily angulated or not? Is it rotated or not? And does it involve the joint? So if it fractures into the joint, which a lot of these fractures do at the base of the thumb as it goes down into the carpal bones, which are the small hand bones, as before they get into what we call the metacarpals, then those, if it's in the joint and it's displaced, meaning shifted at all, then you have to surgically correct that. Otherwise, the joint will be unstable and result in rapid and early arthritis in the non-functioning joint. And so a lot of these professional athletes will have what's called Bennett fractures or Rolando fractures, which are unstable fractures at the base of the thumb when they throw and they hit another athlete's hand or helmet. And a lot of times those will require surgical intervention, or they can have other injuries such as ulnar collateral ligament injuries that are unstable and require surgical repair as well. So it's more likely an unstable fracture, meaning it's rotated, angled, and or inside the joint requiring surgical intervention, where probably your situation, it was a partial fracture, maybe a buccal fracture, and those will heal uneventfully without surgical intervention in a cast.
If you are making your living throwing footballs and you have a right thumb injury, that's obviously problematic. After the surgery and after the rehab and after he's back, how much could the pain for something like this linger?
Well, he'll probably hurt for a solid 3 months, and it may take him 6 months before he forgets about having the injury just because he's going to go back and play. He'll probably return to play around 6 weeks, pending no surgical problems or complications. Would be a typical rapid recovery for this type of surgical intervention. I think 4 weeks would be pushing it. But because he's, going back to high-level throwing, he's probably going to be sore for a couple of months. I would say probably in the order of 3 to 6 months just from being as active and as many balls as he's going to be throwing.
There you go. Adam Metzler, OrthoCincy. Go to OrthoCincy.com. I appreciate the time. Orthopedic Urgent Care. By the way, they've got locations in Edgewood and Eastgate that have hours that go till 9 o'clock weeknights and Saturday hours as well. Go to OrthoCincy.com. Again, appreciate the time of Dr. Adam Metzler. I'm going to move Tony Pike losing his mind in the Bengals offense to after 5 o'clock. We have Brenneman and Jones on baseball coming up, and your phone calls as well on ESPN 1530. Hey, it's Mo Eggert. Chances are you're thinking ahead to football season and probably wondering where you're going to watch all the big games. I've got a suggestion. Long Neck Sports Grill. By the way, phenomenal plays for your fantasy football draft. They've got an amazing menu, but you got to get the wings, an incredible beer selection, and, of course, 4K TVs all over the place, and they've got the sound on for all the big games. Plus, they've got an outdoor patio for those perfect summer and warm autumn evenings. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often.